Ferrari may have just discovered the most painful truth in Formula One. Sometimes the upgrade you bring to save your season is the same upgrade that exposes how broken your car really is. Because Austria was supposed to be the weekend Ferrari arrived with answers. New engine, new shell fuel, fresh momentum from Hamilton's win in Barcelona, and all the hope in the world that the red car was finally ready to go from dangerous outsider to real Mercedes threat. But by Sunday afternoon, Lewis Hamilton was 5th, Charles Leclerc was 8th, and the most important moment of Ferrari's weekend was not an overtake, a strategy call, or even a lap time. It was Hamilton on the radio, basically telling the world, this car still has the same wound. So before we go deeper, if you still believe Lewis Hamilton can somehow drag Ferrari into an 8th championship fight, subscribe to the channel right now, and comment what you think Ferrari must fix first. The engine, the energy deployment, or the classic Ferrari habit of giving fans hope and then making them need therapy. Because Austria did not just hurt Ferrari, it exposed them. And that is where this story becomes much bigger than one bad result. The painful part is that Ferrari did not arrive in Austria empty-handed. They came in with the exact kind of package fans had been begging for. After Barcelona, the mood around Ferrari had changed completely. Hamilton had won in red. The aerodynamic upgrade looked real. The car looked kinder on its tires. The corners looked alive. Mercedes suddenly looked human. For once, Ferrari fans had permission to dream without immediately being laughed out of the room. And then Austria happened. Hamilton finished 5th. Leclerc finished 8th. Mercedes beat them. Verstappen beat them. Piastri beat them. And the supposed engine step that was meant to narrow the gap did not create the headline Ferrari wanted. Instead, it created a much uglier question. What if Ferrari's problem is not simply that they need more power? What if the real problem is how the entire power unit delivers that power across a lap? That is the part many people are missing. Because after a race like Austria, it is easy to say Ferrari lacked straight-line speed. That is true. But it is also too simple. This was not just a case of Ferrari being a little slow at the end of the straight. This was not just a bad setup choice, or a wing level that made them draggy. This was a repeatable, visible, race-damaging weakness. The kind of weakness rival drivers can feel in real time. And Kimi Antonelli gave us the clearest example. Early in the race, he was following Leclerc, and he nearly ran into the back of the Ferrari at turn 1. Not because Leclerc randomly slammed on the brakes. Not because there was chaos ahead. Not because Antonelli was asleep at the wheel. It happened because Ferrari's energy deployment faded so hard on the straight that the speed difference became frightening. Around 30 kilometers per hour. Let that sink in. The championship leader was following a Ferrari at racing speed and almost hit it because the car in front lost so much speed, so suddenly, in a place where it should have been accelerating. That is not just slow. That is scary slow. That is the kind of moment that tells every engineer in the paddock exactly where to look. And the paddock already has a name for it. Super clipping. Which sounds like a gaming cheat code, but for Ferrari, it is basically a nightmare wearing a technical term. In simple language, clipping is what happens when the electrical part of the power unit stops giving the car extra energy before the end of a straight. Every team deals with energy deployment. Every car has to harvest, store, and release electrical energy across a lap. But the key difference is how gracefully it happens. A strong power unit keeps pulling. A weaker one fades. Ferrari's problem is that when their deployment runs out, the car does not just lose a little punch. It starts looking like someone unplugged it. And when that happens against Mercedes, the damage becomes brutal. Because Mercedes are not just fast at peak speed, they are efficient in how they carry that speed, how they deploy energy, and how they keep the car alive at the end of long straights. That is why Austria was such a cruel test for Ferrari. The Red Bull Ring is short, aggressive, and power-hungry. There are long full-throttle sections, hard braking zones, and very little time for the hybrid system to breathe. If your deployment is weak, Austria will not hide it. Austria will put it on a billboard, and that is exactly what happened. The speed trap numbers told the same story Hamilton told on the radio. Ferrari were behind Mercedes. Not by a tiny amount that could be brushed away with setup excuses. Enough for it to matter in attack, enough for it to matter in defense, enough for it to define the race. Hamilton said the cars did not agree with any of the tires, but then he went straight to the real issue. The Achilles heel is obvious. A lack of straight-line speed compared to Mercedes. That sentence matters because Hamilton is not guessing. He is not doing fan commentary. He is driving the car. He feels where the lap time disappears. He knows when he can attack and when he is just being dragged into a fight he cannot win. And then came the most worrying part. He said Ferrari will have to push hard to see when the next power upgrade can arrive. Then he added that it will not come for a while. That is not frustration. That is a warning. Because when a driver says the next fix is not coming soon, he is telling you this is not a one-weekend problem. This is baked into the current package. And this is where Ferrari fans should be paying attention. Austria did not prove Ferrari have no speed. It proved Ferrari have conditional speed. There is a big difference. In Barcelona, the car looked strong because the circuit rewarded what Ferrari does well: aerodynamic balance, tire management, cornering speed, high load performance. Hamilton had a car he could work with, and the result was beautiful. Austria punished what Ferrari does badly: straight line efficiency, energy deployment, sustained power, defending at the end of the straight, attacking cars with cleaner deployment. So now Ferrari are in a strange position. They have a car that can look like a title contender one weekend and a damage limitation machine the next. That is not how you win championships. That is how you stay in the conversation just long enough to give your fans emotional whiplash. And Ferrari fans know this feeling too well. This team can produce hope with world-class efficiency, sometimes more efficiently than the power unit, unfortunately. One race, everyone is calculating championship permutations. The next race, everyone is calculating how many coping mechanisms they have left before Monza. But this time, the issue is not mysterious. That is the important part. This is not one of those Ferrari weekends where everyone is arguing about whether the strategy was wrong, whether the tires were wrong, whether the setup was wrong, whether the wind was wrong, whether Mercury was in retrograde, or whether the pit wall accidentally opened a cooking tutorial instead of the race data. This one is clearer. The SF26 has a real power unit limitation, and more specifically, it has an energy deployment limitation that is costing them at exactly the worst places on track. The Austria engine upgrade was supposed to help, but it was never really going to solve everything. That is where the hype around the upgrade may have got ahead of reality. A lot of people heard new engine and new shell fuel and immediately jumped to Ferrari are about to find 30 horsepower and turn into a rocket ship. But the actual picture seems more complicated. This first step was more modest. It was aimed at improving combustion efficiency and extracting a bit more performance from the package. Useful? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. Season-changing on its own? Clearly not. Because if Ferrari are still being exposed on the straights after the upgrade, then the upgrade was only treating part of the wound, not the whole injury. And this is where the second upgrade becomes the real story. Ferrari's larger power unit step, the one expected later, is the one that could address the deeper issue: the turbocharger specification, the peak power problem, the broader architecture of how the car produces and deploys performance. That is why Hamilton's words matter so much. He was not just reacting to Austria. He was pointing toward the future. He knows the car needs the next power step. He knows it is not immediate. And he knows Ferrari must survive the races between now and then without letting Mercedes pull the championship out of reach. That is the real pressure. Not whether Ferrari can win a race. They already proved they can. The question is whether Ferrari can stay close on the weekends where the circuit does not love them back. Because championships are not won only on your best tracks. They are won by limiting the damage on your worst ones. And Austria looked like damage. The problem is that Silverstone is next, and Silverstone does not offer Ferrari a simple answer. On paper, you look at Silverstone and immediately worry. Long straights, high-speed sections, huge demand on power and energy deployment. The hangar straight is not exactly the place you want to arrive with a car that starts running out of electrical support like it has somewhere else to be. If Austria exposed Ferrari's weakness, Silverstone could expose it again. But here is where things get interesting. Silverstone is not just a straight-line circuit. It is also one of the greatest aerodynamic tests in Formula One. Copse, Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel. That entire sequence is where a strong chassis can make up serious time. It rewards balance, confidence, stability, and a car that can change direction at high speed without making the driver question all his life choices. And that is where Ferrari may still have a weapon. Because the same aerodynamic strength that made Hamilton so dangerous in Barcelona could matter again at Silverstone. That gives Ferrari a fighting chance. Not a guaranteed win. Not a comfortable weekend. A chance. And right now, Ferrari need chances. The big question is whether the time they gain through the high-speed corners can survive what they lose on the straights. That is the whole Silverstone equation. Can Ferrari be good enough in the corners to hide the pain on the hangar straight? Can Hamilton keep the car in the window long enough to fight Mercedes? Can Leclerc recover from another frustrating result and turn the package into something useful? Or will Silverstone become Austria with more British flags and even louder heartbreak? That is what makes the next race so important. Because if Ferrari are strong at Silverstone, then Austria becomes a circuit-specific warning. If Ferrari struggle again, then Austria becomes something much worse. A pattern. And patterns are what championships are built on, or lost by. For Mercedes, this is a huge opportunity. They will not say it publicly, of course. They will give calm answers, talk about execution, focus, balance, and all the usual polished phrases teams use when they do not want to sound too happy that their rival is suffering. But behind the scenes, they know what Austria showed. Ferrari can be beaten if you force them into a straight-line fight. Antonelli knows it. Russell knows it. The engineers know it. And once your rivals know exactly where you are weak, the racing becomes even harder. Because they start attacking you in those zones. They start pressuring your deployment. They start forcing you to defend where you cannot defend cleanly. They make your weakness louder. That is why this is not just a technical issue. It is a strategic issue. If Ferrari cannot protect themselves on the straights, every battle becomes harder, overtaking becomes harder, defending becomes harder, tire management becomes harder, because you are forced into awkward compromises. Strategy becomes harder because track position becomes more fragile. One weakness starts infecting the whole race. That is what Austria showed. And that is why Hamilton sounded so direct. He knows Ferrari have a good car hidden inside this problem. That may be the most frustrating part. This is not a slow car. This is not a disaster of a chassis. This is not Ferrari being nowhere. The chassis is good. The tire management can be excellent. The aerodynamic development has clearly moved the car forward. In the right conditions, Ferrari can hurt Mercedes. But the power unit is stopping the car from being complete. And incomplete cars do not win easy championships. They win complicated races. They win when the circuit suits them. They win when the weather helps. They win when the strategy is perfect. They win when the rival slips. But to win a championship, Ferrari need to be dangerous everywhere. Right now, they are not. That is the harsh truth. Hamilton's Barcelona win gave Ferrari belief. Austria gave them a reality check. And Silverstone will tell us which one was more honest. Because if Hamilton can fight at Silverstone, even with the power issue, then Ferrari still have a route through this. They can survive until the second upgrade. They can keep collecting points. They can wait for the turbocharger revision and hope the bigger step brings the SF26 into a more complete window. But if Silverstone becomes another weekend where Ferrari are fast in some sectors and helpless in the places that decide overtakes, then Mercedes will breathe a lot easier. And Hamilton's title push becomes less about attacking and more about waiting. That is dangerous. Because waiting in Formula One is how gaps become too big. And Hamilton is not chasing some small deficit anymore. He is trying to keep a championship alive while the car is still waiting for the part of the upgrade program that actually matters most. That is the tension. Ferrari have enough performance to make the season interesting. But do they have enough time to make it real? Because there is a world where this all comes together. The second power upgrade arrives. The deployment issue improves. The turbocharger change adds the missing punch. The chassis continues to work. Hamilton keeps building confidence. Leclerc starts converting weekends again. Mercedes' reliability pressure returns. And suddenly Ferrari are not just hoping, they are hunting again. But there is also the other world. The more Ferrari world. The upgrade arrives late. The gap is already too big. Mercedes manage the season. Hamilton steals a few brilliant results. Ferrari fans spend every Sunday saying, the pace was actually better than the result, which is basically the official anthem of suffering. And the championship becomes another story of what might have been. That is why Austria mattered so much. Not because Ferrari finished 5th and 8th. Bad results happen. Austria mattered because the race explained the weakness in public. Hamilton said it. Antonelli felt it. The speed trap confirmed it. The result punished it. There is no hiding now. Ferrari's challenge is no longer about proving they can build a fast car. They have done that. Their challenge is proving they can build a complete one before the championship moves on without them. And that is why Silverstone is so fascinating. It gives Ferrari both danger and hope. Danger on the straights, hope in the high-speed corners, danger in the deployment zones, hope in the aerodynamic load. Danger if Mercedes can stretch their legs. Hope if Hamilton can make the Ferrari dance through the sections where confidence matters more than pure power. This is not a simple race for Ferrari. It is an exam. Austria asked one question and Ferrari failed it. Silverstone asks a different one. Can Ferrari's chassis hide the engine problem long enough to keep Hamilton alive in the fight? That is the question. And the answer may decide whether Barcelona was the beginning of something real or just the most beautiful false alarm Ferrari fans have had in years. So what do you think? Can Hamilton still drag this Ferrari into an 8th championship fight? Is Silverstone the place where the SF26 fights back, or will the hangar straight expose the same weakness all over again? And be honest, are Ferrari actually building towards something dangerous, or are we all falling for the red dream again? Because right now, one thing is clear. Ferrari did not leave Austria confused. They left with the truth. The car has corner speed. The car has tire life. The car has Lewis Hamilton. But until Ferrari fix the power unit and stop that brutal energy drop on the straights, Mercedes do not just have a faster car in the right places. They have a target. And that target is Ferrari's Achilles heel.